So Ryan, what's on your radar?
So it's fitting that the attempt by the United States to extradite and prosecute Julian Assange for the crime of exposing evidence of U.S. war crimes continues to be as grotesque and macabre in details as it is in general. Yesterday, the United States won an incremental victory against Assange, arguing to the court that Assange hadn't definitively proven that he would commit suicide under torturous U.S. detainment conditions, but rather only that he might. The evidence the United States used to justify its argument was that Assange has 2 children, which means that he has an incentive not to kill himself, which, to the U.S., means that the United States should be allowed to put him in a cage for the rest of his life. I'm trying to think of a more shameful pursuit that American prosecutors could be involved in, or a more shameful way they could be carrying it out, but I'm coming up empty. This entire prosecution is a hideous stain on America's reputation globally, and the relentlessness of the prosecution has already been used by autocrats and dictators to justify their own human rights crackdowns. That's the consequence of not living up to our stated values. Now, we here in the U.S. might know that we're not really serious about what we say we believe in, but many people around the world believe it. So when we do the opposite, the worst kinds of people use it to their advantage. Don't forget that these are some of the same prosecutors who hounded Chelsea Manning to testify against Assange until she attempted suicide in prison. One of the lead prosecutors, Gordon Kromberg, is a notorious figure in U.S. legal circles, and the fact that Biden and Merrick Garland are allowing him anywhere near this case shows that their promises of rolling back Trump's war on the free press are utterly hollow. My Intercept colleague, Maz Hussein, recently took a close look at Kromberg's career and found him to be at the center of many of the worst DOJ overreaches of the past 2 decades. New York Times reporter Adam Goldman fleshed out some additional detail in a recent Twitter thread, noting that he was a lead prosecutor in the Trump administration's effort to get tens of thousands of emails from CNN reporter Barbara Starr, and had worked with then Attorney General Jeff Sessions to undermine the head of the DOJ's National Security Division, all in an effort to take the gloves off and go after whistleblowers with an even greater vengeance. Kromberg is known for playing dirty, and I can't think of much dirtier than using a person's love of their children as a justification for locking them away by using that as evidence that the target might not actually commit suicide, no matter what the psychologist in the case testified. The government's win in the appeal doesn't mean they've won the whole case, and that one's still being fought out. It just means that they should be deeply ashamed of themselves. Kim, what do you think of this appeal and the United States winning this round of the appeal?
I mean, free Julian Assange, first of all. He absolutely should not be locked up. This is the first time that, and I don't think people fully kind of grasp the magnitude of this, but this is the first time a journalist is actually being charged under the Espionage Act. So journalists have been jailed in the past for contempt of court, for example, for not for failing to testify or reveal their sources. But this is the first time a journalist is being really that they're going to go after a journalist for publishing or a publisher. And that is, so this whole when they went after him this time and said, well, we want to continue to extradite him and we don't agree with the ruling in January because he has 2 kids. I mean, this is, again, the UK kind of caving to what the US wants. The UK really should just let him go. Now this is going to be pushed to October. He's still going to be sitting in there for a while. I mean, this is just outrageous. And it really, it's interesting when you mention, it's Trump's war on journalists or Trump's war on the free press. And really, this was Obama's war on the free press. So I'm really interested to hear your take on this, Alyssa, with Julian Assange.
It's a complex issue. I will say that. I totally agree with Ryan and with you, Kim, that the way in which he's been being treated, the judicial proceedings, and the way that he's been incarcerated are unacceptable. He absolutely had a right to have embassy in the Ecuadorian, to have asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. What is kind of complicated about his case, and it has been from the outset, I think he's one of the most unique whistleblowers and figures in international culture is the fact that he's sort of a man on an island without a nation. He doesn't have his home nation advocating for him in any sense, so it ends up giving him, he doesn't really have any sort of that backing that you could traditionally have. I'll be curious to see how this goes. I'm not of the mind that the UK is necessarily going to extradite him to the US, so then the question is going to become long-term, what do we do with him? But fundamentally, whistleblowers need protections. I would take a little bit of issue of classifying him fully as a journalist. Releasing hacked information is a bit different than pursuing credible journalism, but I do think as a whistleblower, he deserves certain protections, and he certainly deserves some sort of backing from his home nation, which he's really failed to have at any point within this years-long saga.
Although, interestingly, he's not actually being charged in connection with the 2016 release of Hillary Clinton, connected emails. He's being charged with publishing what Chelsea Manning, the Pentagon whistleblower, leaked to him. So it's not actually related to hacking there. One of the things that doesn't get talked about much in this case is, to Alyssa's point, he's not an American citizen, and so people call him a traitor, and he's charged under the Espionage Act. It's like, how can you be a traitor to a country you're not a citizen of? And he's only been to the United States a couple of times, and for short periods of times, which then raises the question: Are U.S. journalists, are we here subject to other countries' laws on journalism? I promise you, I have broken Chinese laws on what I've published and what I shouldn't publish. I've broken Emirati laws. That the Emiratis have very strict laws on what can be published. There are countries that have laws that say you can't publish something that's critical of a particular leader or of the government. So can they then try to extradite us for breaking their laws? And if you follow the United States logic here, the answer would be yes. And don't kid yourself for a second. There will be countries that try to extradite United States journalists for publishing things that are critical of governments around the country, saying that, you guys extradited Julian Assange for something you didn't like. Kim, do you think that this is going to set a precedent globally?
Well, I mean, it's certainly other countries are trying to use it as a precedent. I mean, we know that even China is trying to extradite journalists that are taking harbor in Hong Kong, for example, and they're potentially going to be extradited back into China to face laws there. And so there's definitely, we're definitely setting ourselves up to be hypocrites. I mean, we are being hypocritical right now just by virtue of charging him because, saying, well, he was hacking. I mean, that's kind of what they're saying, is they're not saying, well, it's because he published, he's a journalist who published. They're saying, no, what's illegal is that he aided and abetted in the hacking. And that, and then their key source, didn't that one fall through?
Mm-hmm.
That person backed out. So there's no real, so there's nobody
and a lot of the charges
there.
are for publishing. Like it's interesting. They will say publicly, well, he's a hacker, he's a cyber terrorist, and some of the charges are connected to that. But the bulk of the charges are quite literally for publishing the information.
Yeah, it's a dangerous precedent to be setting. I mean, here we are saying that we're the beacon of the free press, and are we really?
No,
not like this.
Not in this case. So Emily Jashinsky joins us next to discuss opposition to expanding the child tax credit. More rising right after this.